So if you have been following the news, you may have noticed that in 10.1.5, Blizzard is actually bringing back Naxxramas. We're getting a lot of the old removed stuff from ages ago. The content was no longer obtainable, a new mount, new achievements, new recipes. However, at the same time, we also datamined some Scarlet Monastery stuff that just came out of nowhere. We have hints of the old Scholomance returning from Classic in a pretty similar manner, and we even have certain signs of the Silver Hand, possibly Stromguard, and even some Scarlet Crusade shields that were updated recently, which kinda goes nicely with the previous hints. So what is really going on? Is this just going to be random side content? And why is Blizzard just suddenly updating all these old instances out of nowhere that are all closely related? If you guys are looking to buy Dragonflight or anything Warcraft related, Gamiibo has some amazing sales that you can check out with my link. On top of that, you can get software, gift cards, various games at crazy prices. Best of all, you can use my code DORON to add yet another discount to your purchase, so make sure to click my link below, check out Gamiibo, and grab some amazing deals. So I've made a video on this previously, and it has been pretty evident lately that Blizzard may actually be doing some sort of a soft style revamp of the old world of Azeroth. A lot of us expected a crazy just cataclysm style explosion where everything just changes overnight with a new expansion, but Blizzard has seriously been updating all of these little things over the past few patches, kinda under the radar, that are all just entirely unrelated to what is currently going on in Dragonflight and the main storyline. A lot of things are really hinting that the revamp of the old world will be happening, but it's sort of a gradual pace where they just do a few things every few months instead of one large massive update. Although who knows, maybe even that big update is going to happen together with a bunch of these small ones. Now, these are some of the news that have kinda gone under the radar, but Blizzard actually started doing this in 10.0.7 a few months back with Zul'Gurub, where they returned a bunch of old armor sets and rewards that were removed from the game ages ago, which really started a trend of them updating some of the old content that is evidently only happening a month or so again later. Now, while they made Zul'Gurub relevant, this in all reality was just a side thing, sort of like collector stuff, not any sort of a storyline or any sort of importance for what is currently going on or any type of neutral lore. Although, interestingly enough, they made some connections with Zuldazar and kinda tied it decently into the new world. However, now in 10.1.5 we are getting like these type of news, but like 10x, and very likely with some actual things going on and multiple old instances happening at the same time, so this doesn't really seem to be a one-off thing as was the case with 10.0.7. So the biggest news that you might have already heard at this point is that Blizzard is actually quite significantly updating Naxxramas in the actual patch, and while we still haven't really gotten deep into it, we have datamined a whole bunch of things of what will be happening. We know that a new mount is coming called the Reigns of Valiance that has the source as itself, meaning that it will likely spawn inside the raid, and as you may know, this is one of the horses of the 4 horsemen. We know a whole bunch of recipes are coming back, a lot of the old removed ones that you can no longer get. We know a few achievements are actually coming back, as well as a spell called Grapple, meaning that this might be a way for you to kinda travel fast around Naxxramas, which definitely does kinda go in line with this being more of a side thing than any sort of a relevant storyline, so you can just kinda speedrun Naxxramas. What is interesting though is that we don't really know whether this is going to be the old classic Naxxramas or the Wrath of the Lich King one in Northrend, because as you may know, the necropolis had moved and the instance is obviously no longer available in the old location, but I do think this might relate to the classic one because we have a few other hints for some old classic instances returning in 10.1.5. However, before we get into that, interestingly enough, we have also datamined the item called the Corrupted Ashbringer, and while this would naturally be super convenient for Naxxramas returning, I'm almost certain this is actually related to the new time travel mega dungeon and the time rifts that are also coming in the patch, as the description says that in this timeline, the sword was never cleansed, so it would be unwise to touch it directly. So with this sort of a description, it is almost certainly related to some sort of an alternate timeline and not what is currently going on in the main universe. Although, who knows, with all these timelines, we might even get a time travel instance to go back to classic Naxxramas, because I don't see how else they're going to do it, since obviously Naxxramas has moved and it is still floating around Northrend. I really hope it is not a return of Kel'Thuzad or some sort, or they definitely kind of just ruined him in Shadowlands, and the Scourge is hardly relevant today, or I don't really see them being any sort of a threat. Now, there is even more interesting information that may or may not be connected, but let's be real, all of this is pretty close on the actual map if you look at it, for it to not be relevant. So, for some reason, in 10.1.5, Blizzard actually updated a part of the old Scarlet Monastery, as in they rebaked some of the textures and made some updates to the pretty old instance. To be precise, the Scarlet Graveyard came back as a new file with completely new minimap files. Based on a few other Datamined strings, most people speculated that this is going to be related to the Halloween event, but I feel like this is way too relevant to other things that are also going on at the same time. Most importantly, because a new Scarlet Crusade shield has been added in the patch as well. It is actually the same model as it was before, but they just created a new texture for it. At the same time, about a month or so ago, we saw a few changes to a few very interesting shields as well. We got an interesting shield with a silver hand design to it, and the icon itself says it is the silver hand. However, interesting enough, as you may know, the silver hand, the Paladin Order logo, is actually an open palm of a silver hand, and this type of a closed fist design is actually related to Stromgarde. We know by the recent timescape that happened prior to Dragonflight, Stromgarde has been significantly built by this point, and it should be an actual Alliance city, maybe not the size of Stormwind, but a pretty significant playable city for the Alliance. However, the biggest news, and keep in mind at the moment this isn't 100% officially confirmed news, but there have actually been some hints that the old classic Scholomance is returning. At the same time, the biggest hint is that this might be the old instance or some version of it, so probably not a revamp recreated one like we previously got, but the actual original. Or they could just be returning some of the old items to the new version. The main source for this right now is the Community Council and very limited Datamined information from 10.1.5, and at this point in time when I'm making this video, we don't really have further information to speculate what else could be happening, so all of this is just super vague, but there are very heavy hints that it is actually returning. Now, realistically with Naxxramas and Scholomance, it is very likely that this is going to be a sighting, as Blizzard is always looking to get some good points from nostalgia to draw in the old players back into the game, especially since a lot of these armors and items are pretty iconic, but I feel like more could be at play here as well. Now, of course, this Naxxramas could be related to the northern one, so it wouldn't have much to do with the other stuff, but at the same time, it could definitely be some type of a time travel scenario, as Blizzard has done this thing with the Bronze Dragons for quite a long time. Plus, Bronze Dragons, time travel, time rifts are essentially just the main theme of 10.1.5. However, every now and then they do something related to the Scarlet Crusade, just out of nowhere. The Plaguelands and this old area of Lordaeron, that I don't feel like a lot of these speculations are actually baseless. I mean, they already have confirmed that Gilneas is sort of coming back, probably in the very near future. Undercity was retaken, there is a big restructuring with the Forsaken. Stromgarde was said to essentially be completely rebuilt and under Alliance control. We know the Scourge was almost entirely destroyed. We even had small Quel'Thalas incursion back at the end of Shadowlands, where they just further culled the Scourge. Now with the recent stuff, we know that dragon riding is coming to both continents of the old world as well, which will almost certainly prompt Blizzard to fix up Silvermoon and Quel'Thalas. I really just hope they don't pretend like Quel'Thalas doesn't have a flying problem and just they keep the status quo. So I really feel like there is a lot of information around this northern part of the Eastern Kingdoms that, while a lot of these could just be ways to pass the time and diversions to bring back some old players, we could definitely be looking at something happening here with the Scarlet Crusade and a big rebuilt part of the formerly destroyed Lordaeron. Thank you for watching. Check out if this new magic in WoW could mean a new class by clicking on the screen, and check out the Academy for videos on real world history. See you next time.